Hello there. Good morning. It is morning. Yes, it is morning. Um, all I want to do is to give a little respect to. Sorry, my camera seems to be a little bit weird. Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, just to give a little respect to those people and to make a comment on the loss of lives that we've had in America in regards to George Floyd. Now, my condolences to his family and to those people and individuals who has lost their life after George Floyd. Again, my condolences to all. As a creator and as a teacher, I felt it was relevant for me to make a comment. And in my experience of teaching, I've taught many individuals from all races, doesn't matter. The interesting thing for a teacher is that you do not see a color of a person, but you see their potential or their ability to progress with the correct and productive guidance. Now, for me, in 40 years of teaching, I have to say that I have never once had any problems with students. The only problems is that some of them may have issues which has no relationship to you, to yourself, but may have problems stemming from home or their own experiences, or they may be in a home, etc. But that does not make them bad individuals. All it does, it makes them more needy. Therefore, you as a teacher has to provide an additional incentive and just an arm to say, well, look, hold on to this. Hopefully, we can steady you and guide you to where you need to get. Um, does racism affect me? Yes, it does. It always has. It's just that I've been fortunate to be one of those people who has been self-motivated, I suppose you can say, to succeed. And it does not mean to say that the steps are easy or they have been short-lived. It's just that I've to myself. I made a little notes for myself to remind me as to what to put comment on. Right, so okay, my connection here is telling me that it's unstable. They're trying to reconnect, but I will proceed anyway. Now, my question here is, what is racism? It is the belief of one race that they are superior over another. Now, whether that is true or not is not relevant because we can see from our own events today, from events of the past, that that has been the case. Now, we live in a predominantly white society. There's no doubt about that. But the tools that we need to enable us to get through that society becomes has been given to us already. It's just that we may not have used it in the way we should. And that tool is education. Now, one of the things for myself as a teacher has been when I go into class and I have confronted by Afro-Caribbean students, then I'm confronted by white students. The attitude of my white students is such that they develop very, very quickly. And within a year, they've gone from being mischievous to being very serious and taking their education as a matter of vital course. Again, in my experience, in regards to Afro-Caribbean male, they then seem to want to stay at that stage all the time. But yet the years has passed by, and rather than develop and progress as they should, they want to stay as if they were 11 years old. Now, that might be possible, but it does not allow you to develop and change as time goes on. It does not give you the tools to become more efficient. It does not give you the education that you will need to survive in the world in which you will be living. Now, I live in a brilliant country. I live in England, and I am pleased to be living in England. With all its issues, with all its problems, with all the place criteria, there's no place I'd rather live than in the United Kingdom. And I speak purely for myself. Now, I went to a ordinary school. I did not get any, well, in my time it was CSEs or now GCSEs at school. But what I found was that there was an opportunity to train to do something that I would like to have done. And I began to train as an electrician on apprenticeship. And it is from that simple basis that I can recommend, if you as a young person is doing anything, trying to get into an apprenticeship. It may not be the apprenticeship that you would like to be in, but what it does is sets you on a foundation that develops your progress and gives you alternative directions. And once you get to a certain point, you can diversify into what suddenly has taken your interest. Now, being no doubt, I am black and I'm handsome. Quite good looking, of course. But if we are going to progress and utilize the opportunities that comes our way, we have to make education our priority. And it does not matter where you come from, whether you're black or white, that education criteria is still relevant. And that applies to all of us. I've enjoyed my time in teaching and lecturing, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But when we're dealing and talking about racism, we have to consider that we have to have a mechanism in how to deal with it and how to get around it without resorting to a physical violence action. That consumes time, it takes up effort, and it wastes a lot of energy. So you have to find an alternative. How did I, as an individual, get around this? Well, I, as an individual, got around this by firstly recognizing that there was an issue. Secondly, I could not walk into an office and say, well, look, I want a job. Or to leave, they'll call the police and they'll have me and they'll simply arrest me and take up time. Now, your criteria and the approach you then need to take becomes more delicate and somewhat more sophisticated. And by being educated and applying an educational mannerism to what you intend to do becomes highly proficient. You cannot change people's minds by force because they will set up an opposition against that change. But what you can do, you can show them by demonstration and illustrations that an alternative mannerism or approach is available. The decision then has to be down to them to adapt or to take on that mannerism. And we can see that over years in time that there has been a change. Now, I can remember for myself when there were no black police officers, there were no black social workers, there were no black teachers. And that is me living in England, and that is in my time. But today, we have black teachers, we have black doctors, we have black lecturers, we have teachers, professors, etc. I know people who are doing their PhD and who have done their masters. I myself started a master's degree some years ago, but I got lazy, and I would admit that. But it is the ability. Excuse me a second. Sorry. Half an hour. One. Okay. My apologies there. My partner just called me. To foot. Okay. Now I've lost what I was saying, but forgive me for that, and I do apologize. But again, it was on the line of how do we deal with racism. One, we need education. Two, we need training. Three, you need to train to be, okay, let's start off with being trained to be a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. These are trades that serve an apprenticeship for 4 years. You can train to be a lawyer, but obviously you will need to start somewhere. You train to be a teacher or a nurse. And any of these things here would be applicable to yourself. Now, I don't know if my mic is working, but I will have to run it and see. If not, I will simply remove it anyway. Okay. Now, again, I've simply made some notes to remind me as to the points and topics I wanted to pick upon. How do we overcome racism? How do we overcome it? We can't. Because as long as there's a human race, we will have racism of one form or another. If it's not one thing, it could be, if it's not a matter of color, it'll be something like you have a flat nose, or you have your age is too big, or something or the other. It'll always be something. But the criteria of overcoming racism is to ensure that everyone has the same information and has the same knowledge. And making knowledge available to each other becomes a parity that allows us to view it in a manner and in a wider spectrum than rather a limited or narrow field. Now, I have friends who have experienced racism and so forth. But what I want to do is to take this. This is an A4 sheet of paper. And I want you to pretend for a moment that this is a wall. But if you take on board that this is a wall, and you remember that the wall can bend, it is not fixed, it is movable, you can then begin to see, how do we overcome the wall? You cannot walk through the wall because it is quite solid and it is movable. So you have options. You can go along the side of the wall and walk along it, and you can walk in either direction. The problem you then have here is that how long or how far does the wall go for? And how long does it reach or extend? Imagine the Berlin Wall. We'll take that as an example. But this is not the Berlin Wall. This is simply an invisible wall that exists. And we have to acquire the skill as to how to get around it. Now, we can walk along it, or we can begin to look at climbing over it. Or we can begin to look at digging down and go under it. Now imagine for one moment, that you have one man against this wall and he's digging down. It could take him 10 years to get 4 feet because he may not have the tools to dig anywhere near the wall required. Let's then imagine 2 men digging down underneath the wall. It will then take him maybe another 10 years to get anywhere. But let us begin to consider, begin to put 20 men, 30 men, and women. My apologies for any discrimination intended. It's not intended at all, and I apologize. Both man and woman can be digging. Now, you increase the number of people digging to 1 million, that wall, to digging down. You increase that number to 2 million. Rather than taking 10 years to get underneath the wall, you might be doing it in a matter of days. The question then becomes, when you have dug down underneath the wall and you've created a path, what are you going to take with you to the other side of the wall? You need to have a skill, and you need to have education that you can take. Because once you get to the other side of the wall, that other side of the wall may, although the individuals there may not all have your qualification or skill, the fact is that you would have been bringing something to the table and then enabling your requirement to be in demand. Now, climbing the wall. What do you need if you're going to climb the wall to go over the top? Let us look at it in this manner. First of all, you will need to go away from the wall. You need to come back prepared. You may need a pickaxe. You may need then a 20-meter length of rope. You will then need the correct footwear. And you will probably start doing little cuts in the wall here at the foothold. You then probably put another little cut in the wall here to give yourself a finger hole, but big enough to give your boots a little climbing stage. And you will climb up the wall stage by stage. Now, there's nothing to say that that will work in any shape or form. But the thing is, you're doing something, you're making a decision to decide how you're going to overcome the wall of racism. And it may not work every time. So, what are you going to do? You do not simply lay down and die. You get up, dust yourself off, and you try again. And you try a different approach. It is in your interest and in all our interests that we lead purely by example. Now, when you get to the top of the wall, assuming you're at the top of the wall, you've got your pickaxe with you, you've got your 20-meter length of rope. Now, going over the wall, how are you going to get down the wall? Because we can assume that they're about 60 to 80 feet drop, let's just say, for argument's sake. We have to make sure that we begin to tie little knots in our rope, which gives us a stepping down onto the other side. Now, we may then have to jump 20 feet. Now, please note this purely hypothetical. Okay, it is purely hypothetical. And it links and relates to the theoretical wall which exists for ourselves. Okay. And as we step over the wall, we would drop down, we then stand still. The decision then is, where do we go from there? I've jumped over the wall, so I'm now a qualified electrician. I have my papers with me. I can now begin to look for a place to live. I need to be able to pay my rent. I'll need a job. I'll need to sign on or something of that sort. And from there, we can begin to build a foundation. Now, we're not saying that foundation is perfect, but it will be shaky. But remember, it is the mechanisms that we employ to get in around, over, or under the wall that we will be coming to face. And whether it is now, whether it is 30 years from now, the action of racism will still be there. But we need to have put in place those tools to be able to deal with it in a manner that does not consume unnecessary time or energy. And we also need to learn to step back, go around, adapt, and fold. My own experience, so just a note here for myself, just to remind me that my own experience, right. I qualified as an electrician, Sitting Gills, Part A, B, and C. Now, I only did my Part A and Part B many moons ago. But when I did my Part B, I failed my mathematics. And then, if you fail in mathematics at Part B, you fail the whole course. Fortunately for me, I passed the Part A. I didn't do the Part C. At the time, I had not the inclination to go that high. But when they told me that I haven't passed my Part B certificate, I tried to take a view and to look at how else can I obtain a technical certificate that will go beyond Part B, because Part B in electrical installation in my time did not give you any passes to university or so forth. And my interest at that time was then to look at how can I begin to create this pass that will give me a credential that will enable me to go to uni. So what I did was to undertake an ONC course in electronics. So I did an ONC in electrical and electronics engineering at a very famous college, actually, Matthew Bolton. But that was one of the top colleges in my time. I acquired that certificate and then went on to do other things. I then got a teaching job working for a association for rehabilitation of young offenders. And I quite enjoyed doing that, what I did. But then I wanted to do a little bit more further still. So I applied for a job at a college in Tamworth. Now, fortunately, I got the job. Worked there for 3 years, coming to work in the morning. And the principal called me to his office. And he said, he showed me a letter I'd made as my application in regards to the application form that I had sent him 3 years before. And he said, you said here that you did the Part B. I said, yes, I did the Part B, that's going to certificate installation, but I didn't pass it at the time. And they wanted me to do the whole course again. So I didn't. I did an ONC instead. Now, here I have Part A, and I have a BTEC ONC certificate. And BTEC ONC certificate at the time was quite a high level qualification. Okay. Then you would go on to HNC or HND. Well, HNC, HND was one and the same course at that time. Yeah. And he said, but where's your Part B? I said, I never got my Part B because I didn't pass the course. Now, you have to now imagine that this is 3 years down the line from my first application. And this was just a cover letter to indicate what I had done. And 3 years on, he's not coming back to me and saying that, where's your Part B? I said, but I have a qualification that's above Part B, electrical. Well, apparently then, he then went on to indicate that because I've mentioned it here, 3 years down the line, he was now going to act on it, and decided that as I haven't got that, I can no longer keep my job. So I lost my job at that time. Now you can imagine that losing your job in such a precarious situation has repercussions. And those repercussions were such that having lost my job at that particular place, when I then began to apply for jobs and so forth. And when I got there, for whatever reason, they telling me that we'll let you know. Got a letter back saying that, sorry, on this occasion you have not been successful. Then I went again, another college, brilliant, talk on the phone, good. Got a letter back, sorry, on this occasion you have not been successful. And this happened at 6 colleges. So you can now begin to imagine that my impression here was that somewhere along the lines, my name must be on some kind of list that they look at or something or the other. I can only imagine. So I have no idea whether that existed or not. So it then became very difficult for me to get a job in England, having lost my job at this previous place. Not acquired a given skill. Well, I remained unemployed for 5 years. But somewhere along the lines, I began to consider that I had to use that time more constructively, and where else can I go that would be useful, that I can employ my skills. Now, fortunately for me, I did a course called binary logic, which was part of my ONC course, and I was able to teach binary logic computing in the Caribbean, and I got my job there in the Caribbean, where I went to work for a year and a half. Then by doing that, I was able to come back to England with a credentials and experience now. And I was then able to apply elsewhere at colleges where I was then employed. Because for whatever reason, I suppose that over that 5-year period, that access of relevant information became no longer relevant in that sense, and it had bypassed itself. But does it make me bitter or angry? No, it doesn't. What it did, it taught me that I needed to be as versatile as possible and to have as many strings to my bow as is possible. And even now, I still haven't given up teaching or learning. The interesting thing also as well is that I went on to do my certificate in education at a university based at Warsaw campus. I done my studied all my assignments and so forth, handed them in, they were marked, they were passed. And for me, you have to remember that then I'm paying for my course myself. So it was done on a part-time basis over 2 years. About 1992, 94, I believe, somewhere there. Now, finished my course, and I went to collect my certificate. The person behind the desk says, Mr. Carden, sorry, but we don't have your certificate. I said, well, who do I need to see to get it? They said, well, so and so and so. So I'm going to see so and so and so, the course director of the course for the cert ed, etc. I said, have you got my certificate? He said, we're not going to give you your certificate, he says. I said, why? He said, we're just not going to give you your certificate. So I began the appeal procedure because, you know, when you go to university, there's what's called an appeal procedure. If you have any complaints in regards to your qualifications. And they came to an appeal procedure. Appeal procedure was held, and you're going to a panel criteria into a room, and you have to sit down and you have a board that makes the decision whether or not they should issue you with your certificate or not. The board on the panel decided that yes, you should issue Mr. C with his certificate. The college, the uni at that time then decided, well, no, we don't have to issue you with your certificate. Although the board has now directed them to issue the certificate, they have decided that they don't have to issue it. So what then happened is that the board then came back to me and informed me that although we have confirmed and recommended that the uni should issue you with your certificate, we cannot compel them to issue your certificate because there's no legal requirement on that basis. Well, I was highly disappointed, but I decided that if they're not going to issue my certificate and they still have it, and I've done the work, that I will add it to my point of reference. Anyone who wants to check that can do. But fortunately for me, as I progressed and continued to learn and educate myself, it became irrelevant in that sense. And by having other tools in your toolkit, it enables you to manipulate and change directions or diversify if you need to. Nothing is perfect. But for me, I can only say that you have to start that initial stage with your own education and to develop yourself. Do what makes you happy and what you feel good in doing. And that will be it for now. Okay. And I thank you for listening. I have no idea whether this will be of any use to you, but I'm hoping that somewhere along the line that you have acquired a little bit of something that might help you with everyday living. Okay, goodbye for now. Bye-bye. Thank you.